Good morning, Mandy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jen?
I am doing great. So, for those that are tuning in and watching us right now, I am Jen Grace, and I am the founder of Publisher Purpose. And you are a new author. So, please share a little bit about who you are and what you're writing about.
Sure. So my name is Mandy Mastros. I'm the pastor of the Moravian Center of Lancaster, which includes the Lancaster Moravian Church, and I'm also chaplain for our Adult Day program, which serves seniors with memory support needs and other daily activities of daily living support. And a third hat that I wear here in the community is I'm a licensed social worker who spends a lot of time working with the homeless population and those in dealing with issues of poverty and mental health and addiction here in our community. And the what I'm writing about is it's a Advent devotional. So for the first 25 days of December, as in the Christian calendar, that's a time of preparing. And so these are stories of hope made up from stories of interactions that I've had with some of those individuals who I work with on the streets.
Mm, I love it. I love it. And so you are a very busy person, a very community oriented and a community focused person, which is so just inspiring to kind of witness just all the different lives that you touch. And I know that the reason, or at least I believe part of the reason for why you were doing this is because of some of those lives that you've touched and the stories that you've heard from folks. So can you just kind of paint a little bit of a picture of, how this book actually came to be?
Yeah. So one of the things the congregation that I serve is this amazing group of people. And about 6 years ago, they sold their building out in the suburbs to move into the city, into the heart of Lancaster City, right above the bus station, and renovated that space to turn it into the adult day center because they wanted to be doing some type of ministry to older adults in the community. And I think moving into the city is a challenge in and of itself. They had been in the city before, but it had been decades, and so the city dynamic had changed. And um, while the main purpose in coming here was to start that adult day center, there were other needs in the community that started to present themselves. Being above the bus station, there are a number of people in this block and in the blocks surrounding us who are homeless, who are living in poverty, who are dealing with addiction, and so many other issues. And so those are now our neighbors. And I think what the congregation was really kind of focusing on was, okay, we really need to make sure we really need to make sure that this adult day center thrives. However, we also don't want to ignore the other needs that are in our community. And so how do we become kind of a support in some way, or how do we even know what's going on in our community? Most of the folks that I deal with or that I work with out on the streets are not people who are going to be here on a Sunday morning. They're not going to come to church. They're not going to get to know the congregation members. Most of those interactions happen with me and with my administrative assistant, and occasionally with a congregation member. But what I was realizing is that I had all of these amazing stories of people with resilience, of people with amazing strength and faith, and stories of hope, experiences that I was having that were touching me so deeply. But because they were happening in the off hours, say for when congregation members were here, I really wanted them to get a glimpse into. So this is what's happening here. These are the people who are our neighbors. These are the people who I'm coming in contact with regularly. And there's so much hope and there's so much life and energy and faith there that at first it started as I would just start sharing snippets of these stories with congregation members, whether it be in worship or in other instances. And I started writing them down and realized I had a number of stories. So for Advent, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I put together just a very loose version of your friendly neighborhood hope shop. for them to use as their journey to walk through Advent and to find those stories of hope. And it was so well received by them and by some friends that I had shared it with that it was, you need to get this published. You need to get this published. And I kind of put it on a back shelf and I don't have time for that. I don't have the energy for that. I don't, And then I was at an event that you were at through Create What's Needed, and just reached out and said, okay, so what would I really need to do this? And you and your team have made that process so easy, and it has been seamless and has been really enjoyable for me.
That's always positive to hear, because this process isn't always seamless and it's not always easy. And so it's great to hear that it has felt both of those things for you. And so when we think about it, so because it's an Advent devotional, and it's for the 25 days of kind of preparation, as you said, in December, and the title of it is Your Friendly Neighborhood Hope Shop. What was the deciding factor for the title of your book in particular?
So it's one of my stories. Actually, there. I had a gentleman who came into the office here. His wife was sick; she was in the hospital. He was having a few issues with mobility, and he was asking if we could help him with a bus pass so that he could get to the hospital to see his wife. And one of my kind of things is that while I'm happy to help individuals, I also like to hear their stories. I like to hear, okay, what's going on? Why is it that you need help with a bus pass? And so he came in and he sat and he talked, and through talking, I realized that he also could use some other things. He could use some toiletries. He could use a snack. And so I got him those things, and we talked about, other ways that we might be able to offer some support to him. And as he was leaving, he said, "Hey, thanks for letting me shop at the Hope Shop." Mm. And my administrative assistant and I looked at each other, and she said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "I did." And so it just kind of stuck. And as I was thinking about that, we've talked about, now we've kind of moved around in our building a little bit, but we have a place where we keep all of the supplies that we share, and we're going to be getting a sign painted that says Hope Shop to put on the door of that space. So
That's so perfect. Oh, that's so good. And what I really enjoy about this, and I keep looking down because I am holding it in my hand, is that there's something, because it is your friendly neighborhood hope shop, and there's something that's very friendly about the way that this book presents and feels. And so I personally am not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person. And when I open these stories, even though it's framed in a religious context, it's so applicable to anybody. Mm-hmm. So I really like the fact that you chose the title that you chose, because I think it makes it more inclusive and more accessible for a lot of people who might be kind of a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, that's not for me because it's talking about God. But the reality is that these stories that you share, some of them are so simple yet so profound, and some of them are really emotional, but there's something so beautiful to be learned from every single thing that you shared. And then you have this little bit of a formula in terms of like reflections, pondering, and prayer. And I think that it's so well kind of structured. What is your hope? No pun intended on that word. What is your hope for the reader, for someone who picks this up? Like, what is it that you want them to kind of get out of kind of working through this? And is the intention for them to use it through the month of December, or could they just kind of pick it up and pick any month to start this in?
So there are a couple different answers to that. The first is that what I hope is that individuals reading this may, depending on where they are in their journey or their experience of how they see individuals who are either homeless or dealing with mental health issues or dealing with addiction, is that this may open their eyes to a new perspective. The folks that I have met, I have been humbled and honored to hear their stories and to be able to share their stories. These are individuals whose voices are not always heard, or not always heard in a positive light. And my hope is that this will give voice to them in some way, and will allow the reader to maybe take a glimpse in a different way at some of the individuals that I have been working with, who I have grown to love and care so much about. Um, I also just want us to be able to see that there's hope. There's hope everywhere. There is that these positive stories happen across different time periods, different individuals, different stories, different experiences. And so I hope that it renews that sense of hope in a time when right now there's a lot going on in our country and our world, and it can be really discouraging. This is something that I hope is kind of a pick me up in that way. Um, and yeah, so, and then there was another part to your question that I'm missing, I think.
Oh, the timing of when,
Oh,
is it
yes,
something that
yes.
people can just use whenever?
So, I've, because it's available now, I've had a number of people who have picked it up and said, they weren't waiting until December to start this. And so they've already been reading through the stories. And so I think the stories themselves, um, there's nothing specifically Advent or December about any of the stories. A couple, especially as we get closer to like the 24th and the 25th, I do pull in the prayers and in my reflections to think about the season of Christmas, but the stories themselves are not time specific.
Yeah, which is so perfect because yeah, I feel like if I were to buy this today, who can wait until December? That seems like it's just too good to wait that long. And what I do love about the stories that you share, because just in the conversations that we've had throughout this process, we certainly share that common bond of wanting to help people who are not often heard, either be heard or seen. And so I love that so much of the stories that you're sharing, that's the exact intention behind them. And so I also know, again, going back to you being a very active person in your community, I know that you are on the board for a couple of organizations, and there's one in particular that you are putting proceeds from the sale of this towards. So can we just kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, one of the things that I've added to the back of the book is a section on resources of agencies and groups that work with the individuals who these stories are about. And one of them is called Lanc Co MyHome. And Lanc Co MyHome is a coalition of individuals and groups from the Lancaster community that work specifically with individuals who are unhoused or who are experiencing housing insecurity. And so have had just a really eye-opening experience, and it has been a blessing to serve on their board, and realizing with the work that they are doing, that hopefully by giving a part of the proceeds from the sale of the book to them, that they will be able to further the work that they're doing in the community. Because it's a coalition of organizations and groups, I also wanted to highlight some of the groups that are a part of that coalition, a part of that helpful work that is happening here in this community. So if you look at the back of the book, you'll see in that appendix section, you'll see not only a description of Lanc Co MyHome, but also Water Street, and also Echoes, and a number of other organizations, a little bit about Moravian Center of Lancaster and the work that we're doing here, to continue to serve individuals in our community. And Lanc Co MyHome has a direct connection with all of those who are listed in the appendix. And for each of them, there's either a link or a number to get more information about how you can support each of those groups, or just to know a little bit more about what they're doing.
That's so good. Are there? I'm just trying to think of like the big picture because I know we've said hope a number of times intentionally, but like the just kind of the if you were to wave a magic wand and suddenly it's a year from now and you have people who have been reading this and giving it to other people and they're sharing things with you, like what are they like? What are you hoping to hear? At whatever period of time from now, that how this book has helped the community and impact people.
Stories and interaction. Human interaction is just so. I I want not only to decrease the stigma surrounding individuals who are homeless, who are dealing with addiction or mental health issues. I want to help to create an image that makes makes people who are in those populations seem more approachable, so that we can start having more conversations, more dialogue, more interactions. And if this opens somebody's heart to start a conversation that they wouldn't have, or to connect in a different way, or to get involved with one of the groups in the book, or with a group in their own community, because while the organizations that I list are focused on Lancaster County, there are groups like this across the country in all places. And so my hope is that it would open people's eyes and help people to get more involved. That's one side of things. So there's the action side, and then there's also the heart side of, you know, for individuals who are needing a little boost of hope, a little boost of there's good in the world. I hope that it provides a little bit of that during this time as well.
Yeah, I feel confident in saying that it will do that, just because I feel like just working with you, and you got through this process very quickly, like an impressively quick period of time. But just having any conversations with you, have it's just there's always like a hopeful, like, yes, there is good in the world. Like I just kind of walking away from any conversation that I feel like you were a part of, that is like that is a big takeaway. So your book and this book is absolutely going to have that kind of ripple effect and kind of get into the hands of so many other people that maybe you yourself individually couldn't have gotten to. And I think that's just one of the beautiful things about books, is that while yes, we're talking about a specific county in Pennsylvania here in the US, there's so many people in so many different countries that could be impacted by this. And that's the really cool part about what you are up to.
Thank you.
Are there any, I guess, final thoughts or anything that you want to share? You know, obviously, for anyone who's looking to get a copy of this book, you can pretty much find it anywhere but where books are sold. It is a very, very new release, so if you go somewhere and you can't quite find it yet, just give it a little bit of time, because it, you know, takes a little bit of time for all of the different places to kind of populate. But you know, it's available on, you know, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, some of those bigger retailers. So
Mhm.
that's the easy kind of call to action, is like, go get the book, you know, get some hope back in your life. But are there any, I guess, final parting words that you might want to share with somebody who maybe they're on the fence of whether or not they should pick this book up?
Um, I would say it's a quick read. They're easy stories. Um, it's been something that I have really enjoyed putting together, and it's been a labor of love for me. And so I would say it's worth it to check it out. And if it's not for you, pass it on to someone else. Maybe it will be for them. So.
Mm. Yes, that is the best way. That is the best thing with books, is that,
Mhm.
you know, people rarely just, no one just throws a book in the garbage. It's always passed along to somebody else, whether it's
Mhm.
donated, given, whatever. And that's the kind of a beautiful thing too. So your message has a huge potential to spread in many places, and a reminder that, you know, proceeds of this do go toward Lanc Co MyHome. And so I think that that's really just really important, because when you're, you know, when you're supporting you and your work, it's also supporting a bunch of other community focused organizations too in their work, which
Yes.
it's a win-win. How can, you know, you can't really go wrong in this situation.
Mhm. I think so.
Agreed. You know, you would think that we were in cahoots on this. Thank you, Mandy. This has been a lovely conversation. I know that we have some of our Connect Exchange and Purpose Practice folks cheering you on in the comments, so which is obviously no surprise. We knew that these lovely people would show up, so that's
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
But thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to see what your book does and how it impacts people.
Thank you.
Have a